Alrighty, yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Mr. DDG94, back with another reaction video. Today we're going to react to Remember Sonic X. Of course we remember Sonic X. What? Gotta go fast, Sonic! Gotta go faster, 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 faster! Go, 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 go! Y'all already know, man. Saturday morning cartoons are in effect, man. Let's get it. Bitch, play!
Wait, remember Sonic X? It was the early 2000s attempt at making a new Sonic cartoon, as the Blue Blur was essentially getting remarketed in a new way, as were most things at the start of the century. If you are familiar with the Spawncast, a gaming news and discussion podcast live here on YouTube, you know I like to make jokes and poke light fun at the Sonic video game franchise, but there was a point in time where I was heavily invested in the Sonic franchise, from the games to merchandise and to the anime. But in general, the one thing I have always and will always like about Sonic is the character of Sonic overall. While Sonic X may not have been the solution for the franchise in general to branch out, the series ended up running for quite some time, with 3 seasons totaling 78 episodes, featuring a mixed bag of what you're going to get from the series. It felt like 2 different shows were trying to come together at times that didn't always click. It wanted to be a Saturday morning cartoon with the fun and carefree nature that a Problem of the Week style show presents, that also wanted to tell these larger arc stories from situations that come from the base plot of the anime to recreating what some of the games had to offer. So for today, let's take a look back on the Sonic X series and see what made it work and what made it not work, but also why it just might be a guilty pleasure show for fans of Sonic at the end of the day. Originally, Sonic X came out in Japan before it made its way here, where I first saw it on the Fox box. Yuji Naka, who at the time served as the head of Sonic Team, the name of the developers for the Sonic video games, would become the executive producer for the anime. His vision for Sonic X would be to help bring the popularity of Sonic to newer heights, believing that the anime, the merchandise, and the video games coming out could really put Sonic up there against the massive juggernaut that Pokemon had already become at the time. 2003 was dubbed Sonic Year internally for the full-on tactics used to build out the Sonic franchise, wanting the newer generation of gamers who are playing on the Game Boy Advance or current home consoles to be introduced to Sonic across the board. I guess the real question here is, was all of this branching out going to truly be worth it for the franchise? It's safe to say that on the gaming side of things, we had some of the most memorable entries into the Sonic franchise outside of the core original games that came before it. At the end of the 90s and the start of the 2000s, Sonic offered an onslaught of new Sonic games: Sonic Advance 1, 2, and 3, Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, Sonic Heroes, and more. There always was representation in gaming form for the series, and this new anime would serve in the aid of brand recognition among many other things. But in a roundabout way, the games would in turn influence the anime, from the attitude of the characters involved aligning to the storylines being used in the show. So let's really break that down, as Sonic X can really be split between the 3 seasons the show had into these multiple different arcs. So let's explore them.
Sonic X will be back in a flash! You're watching Sonic X.
Season 1 of the show focuses on just what in the heck is going on, with Sonic and the extended Sonic cast of characters being thrust from their world and into an adjacent one that represents Earth, essentially, making the base format of the show an isekai, having a fish out of water or hedgehog out of a parallel universe story. Starting off the series with Sonic in his world going after Dr. Eggman, who has the Chaos Emeralds and has captured the character Cream. Sonic and friends attempt to save Cream and stop Dr. Eggman, but the plans go haywire, with the Chaos Emeralds unleashing the power of Chaos Control, causing an all-powerful dome of light to consume the area, resulting in everyone now ending up in our world. Well, a version of our world filled with some fictional places, like Central City, California, where Sonic immediately finds himself on the run from the local authorities before running into the human character of Chris. Chris is a rich kid who lives in a very nice estate, as Sonic and friends quickly become friends with Chris, who ends up at first hiding them to keep them from being discovered, especially by his parents, but this doesn't last too long until their cover is blown and they become accepted and welcomed, as they also end up having to deal with Dr. Eggman and all of his evil plans. The main struggle here between our heroes and the bad guys is over the Chaos Emeralds still, as they have made their way to Earth as well, and the fight to collect them first is on. All of this information ends up on the president's desk, and soon after, Sonic works alongside the military to fully put an end to Dr. Eggman's plans of world domination. Is this a not so well hidden piece of propaganda to join the military? Nah, not quite. It's all portrayed really silly. Once we get through the starting arc that fully introduces us to the way things are for Sonic and friends now on Earth, they still have much left to deal with if they want to have a chance at getting home. The Chaos Emeralds are the key, and we see more continuing fights between Sonic and Dr. Eggman throughout this season as they are able to collect the emeralds together, leading to some internal conflict later on with a character like Knuckles, and how he sees coming up with a solution to try and get the last emerald from Dr. Eggman, foolishly trusting him at one point in the pursuit of doing so, resulting in Dr. Eggman now having all the emeralds and becoming the more powerful version of himself to now finally defeat Sonic. Through this, Chris is able to come to the rescue and help Sonic get his hands back on the emeralds, and then go Supersonic to defeat Dr. Eggman once more, but really this moment allowed Chris to play a larger role in helping out the Sonic crew and give him a better reason to be included onto the show. If you're going to add a character like this to the show, it's better to give him some sort of real reason to be there, regardless if it can feel more like a random thing sometimes. The show could easily work without a human addition to the team, where Sonic has to deal with these situations on his own or with his friends, but if you're tossing in a human element anyway for the reasons of relating to the show better for the viewers, or to be like some other shows on the air, then at least having him do, well, anything I guess is good to see. And this is something that will progress more throughout the series, since the human element of the show isn't really going anywhere. After this whole bit of getting the emeralds back and defeating Dr. Eggman again, Sonic and friends attempt to return home with the Chaos Control power, but it doesn't work in doing just that. Instead, it brings to Earth parts of their world and more mysteries to figure out in the next season. Season 1 really is just this mixed match series that does deal with the Chaos Emeralds and Dr. Eggman, but it quickly turns further into the Saturday morning cartoon that it is, featuring a wide array of episodes that are nonsensical, random, and honestly chaotic sometimes due to their plot structures. But I think that's why it oddly works here and there. I wouldn't call it great, but the ridiculousness and absurdity of it all do make for some fun one-off episodes. But don't get me wrong, there are plenty of episodes that are just not great. Chris often feels like a throwaway character to give us this human vessel, and for the most part he is, but sometimes we do get a little bit more character for him. A character that does have his own life going on outside of being there for Sonic and whatever else is happening. He has his own group of friends that get some screen time, Danny, Francis, and Helen, and they do aid in adding more depth to Chris's character overall, but among this character of friends, one of them gets more of a focus to stand out, and that's Helen, a character bound to a wheelchair who doesn't let that define her. She has wants and dreams, and even Sonic ends up helping her achieve one of them in a very heartwarming episode, allowing us to see how Sonic bonds with the other human characters as well. It's a great moment of character building and world building that we don't get to see a lot throughout the series, especially with what can be deemed as a side character. That being said, the human characters in the show end up being the least interesting part of the series, but that's understandable when the show should be more focused on Sonic and his allies from their homeworld. Sadly, Knuckles, Cream, Amy, Tails, they all feel like they're playing second fiddle when it comes to more screen time for characters like the President or Chris's family. And while those other characters do get some nice moments that make for some good laughs or to drive the plot to be way more crazy than it needed to be, there should have been at least a bit more focus on Sonic's pals, as all that left a lot to be desired, especially in the first season. And this one feels hit or miss with a lot of Sonic fans, or when just speaking about those who watch the show in general. There are bright spots in season 1, but there are a lot of downsides to it as well. But what about where it goes from here? Sonic 2 is where the video game influence comes into play thanks to the adventure games, where the first bit of the season follows the plot of Sonic Adventure 1, but in a much more condensed way. This brings in Dr. Eggman's return, as he ends up finding out about Chaos, this embodiment of power and destruction that feeds on the power of the Chaos Emeralds. To set this power free, Dr. Eggman blasts apart the Master Emerald that held Chaos at bay, scattering the pieces of the Master Emerald, giving Knuckles a side mission to find those pieces, while he also learns a bit about his past. Chaos, though, much like the actual word, is a character that can't really be controlled, going on its own to collect the emeralds and become the most powerful version of Chaos it can become, destroying a whole city, surprisingly harming 0 people by doing so, but it's a cartoon and a 4Kids dub, so what did you expect? Thanks to Sonic having a really fun battle as Super Sonic against Chaos to defeat him, and the help from a character named Tikal, who originally contained Chaos in the Master Emerald along with her own spirit a long time ago, and was now released when Chaos was, they are able to once again contain Chaos within the Master Emerald, along with Tikal's spirit once more. As quickly as that was ran through, we right away jump into the story elements of Sonic Adventure 2, where Shadow the Hedgehog is introduced into the series thanks to Dr. Eggman, and now Shadow's evil doings are being mistaken for Sonic doing them because they see these 2 completely different hedgehogs and think, oh yeah, that's the same person. Haunted by these visions of a woman named Maria whose life was lost due to humans, Shadow is blinded by revenge on the human race, helping Dr. Eggman activate the Eclipse Cannon, a weapon with the power to blow up Earth, but instead is used here by the powers of the Emeralds to blow up half of the moon in a show of force. And things only get worse for Sonic and friends here when they try to go and confront Dr. Eggman. But with all of the emeralds in the same vicinity now, at this space colony Ark, it automates another program unbeknownst to Dr. Eggman set to collide the Ark with Earth itself. Now, Dr. Eggman's threats of world domination would be no more if there is no more world to dominate. So good guys and bad have to work together. Chris comes in clutch once again, having time with Shadow to help him fully remember his past and what happened, seeing that Maria in the end never wanted him to seek out this revenge, and plans to now help out the others in stopping Doomsday from happening. In the pursuit of trying to stop this, a giant lizard creature stands in their way, with Sonic and Shadow entering into their super modes to go off and defeat it, as well as finding the solution to stop the Ark from colliding with Earth that would end up taking the life of Shadow. This was easily the best told part of the season and really gave Shadow a thoughtful retelling of his backstory with Maria before he went all Shadow the Hedgehog video game on the world. The problems with Season 2 really boil down to rushing certain story elements of the games. Now, it's not all bad, it's a nice way to adapt certain aspects and create a more clear narrative structure that would work better in this medium. It's just that certain moments from the game itself that do get touched on and get a less than great emphasis put on them, making their impact less interesting or meaningful compared to the games themselves, put a damper on telling them in the first place. Specifically, E-102 Gamma's arc, which tells us the story of a robot that discovers compassion through a bird named Lily, disturbing imagery of robots being torn apart and the animals trapped inside these machines being painfully rebuilt, as well as Amy's kindness in helping Gamma see that they are good, ending on Gamma rebelling against Dr. Eggman and all that he has done to the machines like him, making the ultimate sacrifice in the end, giving up its robot life to set free the birds inside the other robots and its own. If that sounds like a rushed explanation of it all, along with the whole birds inside the robots thing, that's because it's rushed here compared to the game's telling of Gamma. But on that same breath, the detail and amount of time that the season spends on Shadow feels much richer, not being afraid to dig into the complexities that come with the character and his past with Maria, causing him to initially be this powerful villain-like character, but have this realization that turns him to sacrificing his life and becoming a hero. It's filled with great character depth and detailed emotions that translate extremely well from the video game version of the story itself. So I guess this balance here is really wishing that the show's take on Sonic Adventure 1 was as thorough as the show's take on Sonic Adventure 2 when it came to the characters themselves. But that's not even where Season 2 of the show ends, as they begin to adapt other elements from other Sonic games and bring the series back to more of what the first season offered.
Sonic X will be back in a flash. You're watching Sonic X.
Continuing from the moon itself now being destroyed, Dr. Eggman began repairing it to make up for all the evil that he has done thus far, and even comes up with a solution when this new version of the moon created keeps the moon in front of the sun, with the solution being these sunshine balls that produce artificial sunlight. The public is happy, but Sonic thinks something is fishy, as he discovers that the sunshine balls are really a way to brainwash people into his worshipping, as the people now become mad at Sonic for stopping this until he reveals what Dr. Eggman was really doing, sending him to jail after this was exposed. This also brings in more characters like the Chaotix crew to the series. The next bit of story the show takes inspirations from is the Game Boy Advance game Sonic Battle, as we get introduced to a robot named ML, as Cream and her Chow Cheese end up helping this little bot out. And then this brings us to a tournament arc that many anime have. After Dr. Eggman escapes from jail, the tournament itself is in the hopes of winning the Red Chaos Emerald, as every character, human, robot, or animal I guess, is allowed to enter and duke it out to become the winner, which Emerald ends up being the powerful little robot who could, but since he originates from being one of Dr. Eggman's robots, the power of the Emerald reverts his programming to being a Dr. Eggman loyalist, causing him to start attacking the city with the others trying to stop him, ending with the closest friends he has made, Cream and Cheese, having to be the ones to defeat him for good after he couldn't be reasoned with to stop what he is doing. After this, we get the wrap-up part of the season where we get to see some more battles with Dr. Eggman, and then we get into the holy crap, what in the space-time continuum is happening moment, where both Sonic's homeworld planet and Earth are coming together somehow, with the result of them doing so leading to devastating consequences that would freeze both of the planets. To stop this, Sonic and his friends need to return home, and they successfully come up with a way to do so. But not for Sonic, who is left on Earth with Chris after Chris's struggles of being alone get fully realized here between the two characters. As they go off on a much more somber journey together, Chris tries to work through his feelings of being lonely before Sonic came around, and feels like he will feel the same after he leaves. I guess that his friend group, his family, butler, maid, all of them aren't there for him or something, but despite that, this is how he overall feels. In a more touching moment in the series, Sonic says that he will always be there for him as the two of them cry while Sonic ends up leaving Chris. We now finish things off on Sonic's home planet where Dr. Eggman is still up to his evil ways, but in the nick of time, Sonic comes back to stand up to him along with all of his allies to defeat him once again, as we get a teaser look into the future where Chris, now older, is working on a project that would allow him to make his way to Sonic's world, giving us some more time with Chris and his friends more grown up as Chris looks back on his time with Sonic, ending the season. Chris's story overall doesn't add much to anything. His arc in the series doesn't feel as emotionally impactful as they seem to display it in his final moments with Sonic this season. I feel the problems with Sonic 2 really stem from the back half, where the show follows the mold of the first season with smaller arcs, but allows for more playful moments of the IP. It splits its focus from a more clear-cut narrative with the Adventure 1 and 2 storylines to a less focused timeline of events that follow. I will say, compared to Season 1, Season 2 has way more highs than lows, especially with the way they handled the Adventure 2 storyline, and honestly, I am fine with the back half stuff as well, but together, it feels like two different shows. And with how big of a cast of characters there are by the end of the season, it rarely felt that any of them got their time to shine moment, or felt like they earned any emotional payoffs like with Chris's story. But that all felt like an ending, right? We know we have another season to cover, but Season 2 wrapped up the overall conclusion. So then what happened? Well, the show was popular, but just not as popular in the Japanese market, but for markets like North America, Europe, and the Middle East, there was a higher demand to keep the show going, making Season 3 pretty much exclusive outside of Japan until 2022, when it will be finally aired on TV there. So yes, Sonic 3 came from more being wanted, and with that demand, those markets sure got more of the Sonic X that they needed, regardless if Season 2 has what seems like a pretty significant finite ending. But forget all that you know about what has come before, as this season gets a bit wild, and potentially produces a season that you may find constantly better as a whole than the previous two. Sonic is dealing with a threat called Dark Oak while he is in supersonic form, but to stop this altercation from getting worse, with the power that this being has, Sonic sends out the Chaos Emeralds all around the galaxy, and gets away from the battle in general. A new character named Cosmo ends up crashing onto Sonic's planet, as she was in search of the one who can harness the power of the emeralds, as Dark Oak and his army called the Metarex steal the planet egg from Sonic's planet, causing the planet to begin dying with the new goal of re-finding the emeralds to defeat this new enemy. I mean, I get why Sonic tossed out the emeralds like that, but needing them right away again just seems like a cop-out way to have them be searched for once more. Revisiting 18-year-old Chris, who finally figures out how to get to Sonic's world, he enters through the portal to see that he has become his 12-year-old self again, with the time difference on how Sonic's planet works versus Earth, which caused only 6 months to go by for Sonic while it's been 6 years for Chris. This, I'm just gonna let it be. Through this season, we get to learn a lot of the backstory of Cosmo and who she really is, and she ends up building a nice relationship with Tails, but not so much with Shadow, who makes a surprising return, with his memory once again kinda wiped thanks to Dr. Eggman. And Dr. Eggman is back as well and has several run-ins with the Sonic crew, but Rouge and Shadow find their own reasons to investigate the whole Metarex situation and try and stop it. But Shadow comes after Cosmo, as she is from the same species as the Metarex and has been a spy for them, but this was forcefully done with her not knowing, and Shadow didn't know that fact yet. Once this does become a fact that he knows, the whole group head to deal with the Metarex army in Dark Oak, and they end up defeating them. But as a parting gift, they target destroying the whole galaxy with a planet that has become a giant seed, and the Metarex turn into a giant beast, latching onto the seed itself and get in their super forms again. But the sacrifice here to truly save the galaxy is that Cosmo gets a vision that she must become one with the seed and sacrifice herself. With the power of having Tails, the character that cares about her the most, shoot in Super Sonic and Super Shadow at the fused version of the seed and herself, taking out the threat of Dark Oak and his army, saving the galaxy, but in turn killing Cosmo. The power of the seed now scatters, with the planet eggs that were stolen all heading back to give new life to the dying planets. But the power of the blast needed to be contained, leaving Shadow to be heroic once more and then dies again. Shadow dies twice in this anime. But in the end, Sonic can hear Cosmo through the universe as he sits in reassurance that the galaxy was saved and Cosmo is technically out there in spirit. Dr. Eggman ends up in aiding getting Chris back home, but it was in the efforts of nerfing Sonic and his friends just a bit for his future evil plans, leading to the same old back and forth Sonic has to do with Dr. Eggman. Chris this season ends up adding a lot more in value to everything happening, piloting their StarCraft, having characteristics that define him, not end up being a lonely side character, and I think that changing his character for the better boils down to him being older now, just back in his younger body. His new mindset and personality from just growing up up stayed with him. For the initial version of Season 3 that we received here in the US, Shadow is dead, but in the official Japanese version, he is shown on another planet, so he doesn't die once or twice in this anime. I think this season overall is a lot more solid and focused for the main story being told, but still finding time to have less serious moments, bringing some lighter tones that we've seen in parts from the previous seasons. The main difference here, fixing the focus from being on all these random human characters and bringing the attention to the core cast of Sonic characters, letting them grow and explore who they are way more than before, which felt like a problem the first 2 seasons really struggled with. Sonic gets a deeper arc for himself, struggling with the power and force that he has, leading to him snapping at one point, unleashing a level of power that makes his spunky attitude disappear and all he sees is the red from the blood of his enemies. Okay, it's not that aggressive with it, but it was still a cool moment. While I said the Japanese version of Season 3 didn't air until 2022, technically the Japanese voice acting was done at the time before the show didn't end up officially airing there, leading to the Japanese audio for those episodes being leaked online around that time. As a series itself, it's okay. There's a lot of good that can be found in each season, but almost an equal amount of bad from the first 2 seasons and some bits of the 3rd season. The show struggled to find what it wanted to be, towing the line of being a direct video game retelling and something wholly original, resulting in a pretty series at the end of the day. But despite this and the more corny writing thanks to 4Kids localizing it, the show still offers a level of charm that makes this a fun watch that you can still poke some fun at while you enjoy it. Whether you think it's bad or think it's good, there's something for every Sonic fan to love here and every fan to come together and laugh at. The fandom for Sonic is massive, and Sonic X is only a small part of the large franchise that Sonic is. There are other Sonic shows out there that have come before and after it, yet Sonic X stayed in the conversation all these years later, and that's because it's memorable. The look of the show, the characters within it, and the storylines all have their degree of nostalgia now attached to the series for those who grew up with it originally. But even today, for people checking it out for the first time, it represents a moment in the history of Sonic where it can be appreciated for what it did to bring in new fans to the series, and try new things both inside and outside of the anime, as well as give us some really great memes to share and laugh about. Anytime we talk about any property that 4Kids acquires a license for, there is to be expected a lot of changes and censorship made compared to the original series. There is to be expected a lot of changes and censorship made compared to the original release of the series that came out in Japan. That's no different here, as Sonic X had its own fair share of changes made. In fact, it's a long list of small things here and there within nearly each episode of the series. Whether the violence was too over the top or some innuendos getting too out of hand, 4Kids had their hands all over the series. While not as harsh as other shows under the 4Kids knife, some of the cuts made are a mixed bag of at least understandable and utterly ridiculous. The legacy of Sonic X lives within the time where so many properties were trying to find their own slice of the early 2000s franchise craze. Everything needed to have video games, TV shows, trading cards, comics, and toys, and the Sonic brand was no stranger to trying to do this. We saw how the anime tied itself to the current line of video games coming out while trying to create its own reasons for the viewer to be attached to it. Sonic X, under that name specifically, did branch out into a trading card game and a comic book series, as well as having toys, both regular action figures and McDonald's toys. While the mainline video games kept being what they were, Sonic X did have a Leapster educational game made, so there's that. And while I may still make jokes at the expense of the Sonic video game side of things, I mean no malice with my words towards it. It's all in good fun, and I support those who love the video games, who love all the different series of shows Sonic has, and all those who just want to collect merchandise related to the Blue Blur. I have my fair share of games in the franchise that I like. I enjoy a lot of parts of this show, and I have a bunch of Sonic collectibles that I own. So I might overall just be an actual fan of Sonic and not just the character himself. Who knows? The Sonic X anime may not be perfect and does a lot different than most people would have wanted, but I still had fun with it back when it came out, and there is a level of nostalgia for the time in which it did originally air on the Fox box. But let me know your thoughts on Sonic X in the comments below. I'm sure you have plenty to say. I've been Jordan Fringe. Thanks so much for watching. Like and subscribe.
Alrighty. Yeah, man, Sonic X, man, that was definitely a classic for me. I used to watch it religiously. I do remember the 3rd season being the best one of the 2, even though the 2nd season felt like it was supposed to be a finale, and they came back with a 3rd season, which I didn't have a problem with, because like you said, it was a high demand for it in America, and I didn't have a problem with it, and it was arguably the best season they made, because the characters the characters meant so much more, and it was in a different environment, and it just focused on the characters. And I think that was part of why I felt like it was a better season than the first two were, because the first two seasons were all over the place. It was too much going on. But yeah, man, that's just gonna about do it for this one. I will see you all in the next video. Till then, peace out.